For all of human history, death has been the one absolute certainty. But what if we stop viewing death as some kind of metaphysical inevitability and start treating it as what it really is? A supply chain problem, an engineering flaw. Our bodies fail simply because the parts wear out. But in the next few decades, those parts are going to become replaceable. We are rapidly approaching the era of radical life extension. And the question we really need to be asking isn't just how we achieve this kind of immortality, but what exactly survives the transition. Let's start with the hardware. For centuries, the ship of Theseus was this abstract thought experiment you discuss in a philosophy class. You know, the one if you replace every single wooden plank on a ship over time, is it still the same ship at the end? Well, today, that thought experiment is becoming a literal blueprint for the future of medicine. We're moving toward an era where human lungs aren't just healed, they're replaced with synthetic versions that never decay, where hearts aren't powered by a biological pulse but by tiny microreactors. So imagine a patient who goes through, say, 50 surgeries over 50 years. Eventually, every single one of their original biological components is gone, replaced with high-grade polymers and nanobots. By the time they celebrate their 150th birthday, not a single atom from their original body remains. Are they still them? This really represents a slow, silent surrender of our own biology. When we start treating the human body as just a collection of modular, swappable parts, we might solve the supply chain problem of death, but we create a profound crisis of identity. If you replace 90% of your biological systems with synthetic ones, the you that exists is no longer really a biological organism. You've become a proprietary piece of hardware that's just maintaining a kind of biological legacy. And that shift from organic to engineered, it creates a new kind of trap. It's a technological path dependency. Think about it. Just as most of us can't imagine our lives without a smartphone today, a synthetic majority human couldn't survive without a specific software ecosystem or manufacturer support. We aren't just extending life, we are outsourcing our very survival to corporations. A system update suddenly becomes a requirement for your continued existence. So, we aren't really curing death, we are just replacing the biological clock with a corporate warranty. But even if we could perfectly maintain the hardware of the body, we eventually face the ultimate bottleneck, the fragile and so far non-replaceable nature of the mind itself. This leads us to the ultimate dream of the transhumanist movement, mind uploading. The idea is to scan the brain's entire structure, its connectome, and move your consciousness into a cloud server or a robotic shell. But there is a fundamental and frankly terrifying flaw in this logic. It's the copy versus move problem. Let's say an engineer scans your brain with 100% accuracy and hits the upload button. Instantly, a digital entity appears in the simulation. It has all your memories. It thinks it's you. It feels like you. But back in the physical lab, the original you is still sitting in the chair, staring at a screen. You haven't moved into the machine. You've simply generated a perfect digital clone. while the original version of you continues to age and eventually die. What this reveals is that digital immortality is basically a lie told to the dying. For the digital entity, the transition feels seamless and real. It remembers being you. But for the actual stream of consciousness that began at your birth, your unique perspective on the world, the lights still go out. We aren't achieving personal immortality. We are just building digital ghosts to replace us so our loved ones don't have to grieve. Now, to be fair, there is a counter argument here. Proponents of a philosophy called functionalism might argue that if the digital copy is functionally indistinguishable from the original, then the distinction doesn't really matter. The information that is times you times survives. But this completely ignores what we might call the inner light of subjective experience. Think about it. The moment that copy is made, two versions of you exist at the same time. And from that point on, their paths diverge. They have different experiences. They become different people. That very fact proves that identity isn't just data, it's a continuous, unreproducible perspective. Mind uploading doesn't save your life, it just creates a high resolution recording that thinks it's still playing. So, if we accept that a digital copy might not truly be us, we have to then ask, what happens to the parts of us that feel most human, our feelings, when they get translated into code? Right now, human emotion is a messy, beautiful chemical byproduct of things like dopamine, cortisol, and serotonin. In a synthetic or a purely digital brain, these messy bugs can become controllable features. They're just sliders on a dashboard. Imagine a world where your synthetic brain architecture ensures that you never feel the crushing weight of depression ever again. Instead, it injects a dose of synthetic joy into your system to make sure you stay productive at your job. In that world, feelings are no longer reactions to what's happening around you, they are deliberate settings chosen for maximum efficiency. This turns the entire human experience into a kind of commodified simulation. When emotions become programmable, they lose their status as truth. I mean, if you feel happy because a microchip boosted your serotonin levels by 15% to help you meet a quarterly deadline, that happiness isn't a genuine reflection of your life's meaning. It's just a performance enhancing drug. The synthesized soul is a hollow one where all the authentic highs and lows of life are smoothed out into a profitable, steady, predictable line. And this control over the internal self leads to an even more terrifying external reality. Who actually owns the controls? In a world where death is just an engineering flaw to be fixed, immortality will not be a human right. It will be a premium subscription service. This is what creates what we could call the biological divide. We are looking at a future where a billionaire doesn't just have more money than a janitor, they have more times centuries asterisk. If you miss a payment on your synthetic heart's licensing fee, your lifespan could literally be repossessed. Access to time itself becomes the ultimate weapon of the elite. Scarcity is what gives human life its shape. Our urgency, our ambition, our creativity, our art, so much of it stems from the fundamental fact that our time is limited. But in a society where the elite have infinite time, that deadline of death disappears for one class while remaining a constant threat for the other. This isn't just a wealth gap. It's practically a speciation event where the rich become a permanent undying aristocracy. And then you have to consider the second order effects on things like innovation and social change. There's an old saying that science advances one funeral at a time because old, entrenched ideas tend to die with the people who hold them. But what happens if the powerful never die? Their ideologies never retire. We could face a kind of civilizational stagnation where the same individuals hold power for 500 years, effectively freezing human culture in a perpetual present. When time becomes a commodity, the poor won't just be broke, they will be temporary. So, as we stand on the threshold of defeating our oldest enemy, we have to look at the wreckage this war might leave behind in our own humanity. When you pull back and look at this whole picture, a few key insights really stand out. There's this profound identity trap, this ship of Theseus crisis, where we might survive physically or digitally, but the original self gets lost in the translation. Then there's the question of our emotions. By turning feelings into programmable variables, we risk stripping life of its meaning, replacing authentic experience with a kind of synthetic joy designed for productivity. And finally, there's this terrifying vision of a temporal caste system where life extension bifurcates humanity, creating a world where time is a subscription and the elite consolidate power for centuries. Without the natural deadline of mortality, the very drivers of human ambition and creativity could just wither away. We are currently obsessed with the how of immortality, how to map the brain, how to build the heart, how to stop the cell from aging. But we are completely ignoring the who. In our desperate, frantic attempt to defeat death, we are treating the human condition like a piece of buggy software that just needs to be patched. The tragedy of the future isn't that we will fail to achieve immortality. The tragedy is that we might succeed, only to realize that by removing the ending of the story, we've made the entire book unreadable. We are trying to cure ourselves of death, but we might accidentally cure ourselves of our humanity. The ultimate question isn't whether we can live forever, but whether a person who cannot die is still, in any meaningful sense, a person at all.